How's it going, you guys? So in this video, I'm going to be explaining the main cause of obesity in our society, the epidemic of obesity, or really more specifically, what we're talking about here is unhealthy levels of body fat, like excessive body fat, okay? Now, if you want the truth, listen to this video and listen to the whole thing. But if you want to live in an echo chamber of bias and dogma, then go elsewhere. Follow the guru that fits your bias, okay? Because what you're going to get here is a perspective from somebody who's been on every single diet under the sun. I own diet books from the vegan camp, from the paleo camp, the ketogenic camp, the carnivore camp, people that promote ideas of repeat, if it fits your macros, all of that. I even have the China study right here, even though I follow a high meat and fruit diet at the current moment. So here's the thing. First of all, obesity has no relevance towards health outcomes. Obesity says nothing about how healthy, how lean someone is, or any of that. Obesity is based on body mass index. Body mass index is based on how much you weigh compared to how tall you are. It is an irrelevant number that is like, we have this chart, and every doctor in America has a chart of body mass index on their wall, and it has a chart of various different weights and heights of different people. For example, if you are 5'10", you're supposed to be like 160 pounds, and if you fall in between 140 and 160 pounds at that height, then you're considered healthy. But God forbid you be 190 pounds at 11% body fat like I am right now, which is very healthy and fit for my age. I'm considered obese on their scale. Plenty of elite level athletes, plenty of people who lived to be like 94 years old or whatever, had no diseases or whatever, and they were wiped out in a car accident, have been considered obese based on this bullshit BMI scale. Okay, so in general, when we're discussing obesity, we're talking about people who are above the body mass index limit on this chart. Okay, in general. In this video, I'm going to be discussing what causes unhealthy levels of body fat. That is generally what people mean when they say obese, especially when we are relating it to health issues. Now, remember, when it comes to things like health outcomes, like for example, recently I posted a video about how 78% of people hospitalized with COVID were obese, okay? Well, here's the thing about that, is when you have a population of people that are considered obese, but at the same time, a high percentage, in this case even a higher percentage of those same people also have heart disease and type 2 diabetes, what that tells you is their obesity is not coming from lean mass. They're not muscular bodybuilders or athletes that are hospitalized for that condition. If they are technically obese and they have type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease at the same time, especially in the average population, we are talking about people that are obese because they have too much body fat on them, okay? So you cannot just use obesity statistics by themselves. You must combine them with other statistics in the same population or the same cohort. And again, this is why, you've got to actually study science and know what you're talking about in order to understand these things. But you can't just follow gurus out there and just believe whatever the hell they say. And too many people do that these days. It's retarded. Let's see. So, right off the bat, the main cause of the epidemic of obesity, the main cause of excessive body fat, is definitely too much energy being consumed and not enough energy being burned. Remember, I don't advocate calories in versus calories out. In fact, all of my clients are on a high protein, low carb, low omega-6 fat diet, usually supplemented with omega-3s. Okay, I know that, repeat people hate that, but I don't really care because I don't follow gurus, I follow the science. So I don't tell them restrict calories. I tell them to moderate their carb intake based on their activity and eat adequate protein. And if you eat fiber, eat it because you like it and because it makes you satiated. I don't tell them that fruits and vegetables are the next messiah. I don't tell them that's like the savior or something. You know, magical polyphenols. So that's my protocol. I don't promote calorie counting or caloric restriction. I do promote energy restriction based on their carb intake. And most strength and conditioning professionals, most of the best in the world, do the same thing. Now, the thing is, regardless, so I don't advocate it, but the fact is, regardless of where those calories are coming from, if you restrict calories below the amount that you're burning, you will have weight loss over time. This has been shown over and over again in metabolic ward studies, and I know this based on being a trainer for over 6 years, actually 7 years now, and being an athlete myself my entire life, and being around all these people, being in school for so long on this subject, studying all these different gurus for so long. And again, I've been on vegan diet, I've been on paleo diet, ketogenic diet, carnivore diet, Mediterranean diet, and I've done the if it fits your macros crap. I've done all of these things, okay? And I've studied all the best books. I have all the books from all these gurus in my room, and I have even more textbooks, college level textbooks on these subjects. The fact is, calories in versus calories out is the determining factor here. That does not mean that restricting carbs doesn't have an advantage. It doesn't mean that like you don't have to worry about protein. Okay, the source of calories does matter. Okay, a calorie is not a calorie in the sense of the source of calories. Okay, but it is still energy in versus energy out. And so we know for sure that carbs do not, like, by themselves directly promote fat loss. Or sorry, we know that carbohydrates are not the cause of fat gain or weight gain. We also know that omega-6 is not the cause of weight gain. Okay? Directly, independently of calories. Now, I'm going to get into why omega-6 and carbohydrates are bad for weight loss later on in this video. But let me just say, first of all, that you don't necessarily need to restrict those in order to promote weight loss. Is it healthy to do a calorie-restricted approach with high carb and high omega-6 fats? I don't think it's healthy for disease outcomes. When we're talking about just weight loss, you can literally eat whatever the fuck you want. And we've seen this with documentaries too, where people just eat nothing but McDonald's and they restrict the calories and they have this weight loss, and some of their health markers improve just because they're starving their body of nutrients. It becomes more efficient with what you give it. Okay? Another example of this is people like Lane Norton, okay? Even though I've talked about why he's wrong on many things before. But Lane Norton, and pretty much everybody who's eating a mainstream caloric-restricted fitness diet, okay? I know plenty of people that know nothing about health, but they just restrict their calories, okay? And they go from being anywhere from 200 to 400 pounds, okay? Super fat, super obese, super unhealthy. And they bring themselves down to a measly 120 to 180 pounds, okay? And now they're fit, they have muscle mass, they're athletic, and they're eating Pop-Tarts. They're eating like ranch dressing with soybean oil in it. They're eating McDonald's, fast food, you know? And they're eating the most shittiest quality food, no matter what nutritional paradigm you come from. You know that junk food and refined foods is unhealthy. But yet they still produce weight loss. They still make these huge transformations, okay? So again, I don't promote calorie counting, okay, or anything like that. And I do promote restricting carbs and restricting your omega-6 fats, linoleic acid in particular, and adequate protein. I promote that. But I acknowledge the fact that it is a energy in versus energies out. What is the word for it? Thermodynamics. It is a thermodynamic equation. It is. But what you have to understand is that the source of these calories dictates a lot of things that can make the diet more sustainable over time and control how much you eat. Okay? So I'm going to get into carbs and omega-6 fats and how they influence weight loss here in a second. But I have to say straight up, the reason why our society has become so overweight, obese, have excessive body fat and all this stuff over the last 100 years, straight up, the main thing, this is, if you really, really look for this in all the research you're presented with, you will find that this is a very likely factor in many aspects of health and weight loss. Not to say that they're the same thing, because you could be like lean and ripped and super unhealthy and die of a heart attack or something. Okay, weight loss is not the same thing as getting healthy, but it is a huge factor. It's one of the main factors. Okay, but the thing is, in the last 100 years, okay, really since the early 1900s or the late 1800s, but the early, like 1920, is when things like soda started to come into play. Things like vegetable oil and whatnot started coming into play. And then in like the 1960s or so, we started to get more, so candy bars started to pop up in the early 1900s. Grocery stores started to become a lot more commonplace. Then we got convenience stores, like gas stations and stuff out of nowhere. Then we got all these vending machines. And over time, the availability of junk food, the availability and the ease of access to junk food, to fast food, to sodas. Literally, any restaurant you go to now, sodas are like the main thing they serve. And it's almost a given that people get a free soda with their meal and blah, blah, blah. And sodas are dirt cheap. So you have that fountain, that soda fountain when you go out to eat. These red meat eaters in these population studies, they're eating fucking McDonald's and shit. And they have an unlimited source of sugar from those soda machines. And what happens is, the more like sugary beverages we drink, for example, the more calories we're consuming, and we don't even recognize these things as calories. We don't even realize, like, you can literally drink like 10 sodas throughout the day, and that's like, I don't know how many calories. Don't quote me on this, but like 2,000 calories. That's a lot of people's so-called like daily value of calories right there from the sodas that they're drinking. And I'm just giving an example as to like how easy it is to get these calories. I think most people know that that's not healthy or not good for weight loss, but you don't even realize how many calories you're eating because of how easy it is to chomp down on refined foods. Hyperpalatable foods, things like candy bars, sodas, snack cakes, French fries and hamburgers and yada yada. And potato chips and things. These things have been genetically, these companies invest millions of dollars to make them as addictive as humanly possible. So that you can eat and keep on eating and not feel satisfied. Okay? No matter how much you eat, you won't feel satisfied. Like there's that thing on the Lay's potato chip thing. Bet you can't eat only one, right? And there's even these challenges now where people they'll have challenges with their friends and put them on YouTube. Who can only eat one potato chip? And there's a book by Rob Wolf called Wired to Eat that talks about this. A very good book, and I highly recommend you subscribe to him and follow his YouTube channel. Anyway, the reason why our society has become progressively overweight as a whole is the accessibility to like non-nutritive, high-calorie foods that do not promote satiety, satiety, And so we have fast food on every corner. We have gas station full of candy and soda. We go to the checkout line at our grocery stores. You could literally avoid all of the packaged food aisles in the grocery store and just shop around the grocery store, like people say. Then you end up in the checkout line, and what is there in the checkout line? There's sodas to your left in the cooler container, and you have freaking candy bars on the right side. And mind you, there's not vegetable oils in most of these foods, but they are there, and they're always there, and they are the exact foods people are overeating on. And the point is not the sugar or the omega-6. It's like these foods are so easy to overeat, and they are addictive as hell. And these companies purposely try to make them as addictive as possible. And they're every freaking where. People just cannot escape it. It's literally like subliminal messages over and over again, combined with the advertisement that they see on the TV screen. People are bombarded with these like M&Ms, super tasty. I don't even know the fucking mantra for M&Ms, but the advertisements, it's like subliminal programming and repetition over time that you've seen since you're a child, and it's even become like a holiday thing. Freaking Halloween is all about overeating sugar, you know? So, yeah, I think it's funny when people say things like, oh, the government guidelines have been high grain, high carb for decades, and we've only gotten fatter since then. So the government guidelines must be wrong. Now, personally, I do think the government guidelines are wrong as far from a health standpoint. But I don't think that anyone in average society that is trying to, just live, I don't think that the cause of obesity is the government guidelines. No one's following the government guidelines. Everybody is overeating whatever the fuck they want. That is the problem, is that people don't give a shit about their health. They're not following government fucking guidelines. They don't give a shit. Okay? And these junk foods and these calorically dense foods that don't satiate people are freaking everywhere. Of course you're going to be freaking fat. Okay? You're going to have a nation of fat fucking people when you just can't escape the fucking the junk food crap. Okay? Super high calories, and they're everywhere. That is, and it is increased over time. Literally, the main reason why we're fat over time, you see a linear correlation between the availability of these hyperpalatable foods and food in general. We didn't have grocery stores for like longer than 100 years or so, whatever. Okay? We used to have, and now we also have things like Uber Eats and these like delivery services to where we don't have to go to the grocery store now. We have people shop for us and just sit in our fat asses and they bring it to our doorstep and we pay them an extra $20 or whatever. So, so that's the cause. Now let me get into carbohydrates and omega-6 fats and how they play a role in all this. So, here's the thing about carbohydrates is that, number one, and I've seen this with myself. So when you go keto, for example, you have no freaking appetite after a couple weeks. Okay? And, the repeat people, or the high carb people will say you have no appetite because of cortisol or because it fucks up your metabolism and now you slowed your metabolism or something. You lowered your thyroid hormone or whatever. First of all, any calorically restricted diet that is substantially restricted over time. This is the problem with caloric restriction. Over time, your body does create something called metabolic adaptation, where your thyroid hormone downregulates in order to preserve your body mass so that you don't starve to death and your body doesn't eat itself alive from caloric restriction. Any energy restricted diet is going to do that over time, mostly if it's calorically restricted. But there was a large study by Tim Noakes done in like 2018 that actually showed it's not the carb restriction that causes downregulation of thyroid hormone. It seems to be the caloric restriction combined with inadequate electrolyte intake. And you see that on all caloric restricted diets. But there may be other factors involved that is exclusive to ketosis. So, but the point is that caloric restricted diets will downregulate your metabolism at a certain point, which is why I don't promote it. And it's not sustainable because no one wants to just restrict calories forever and track calories forever and stuff like that and undereat and keep their body in that state of like catabolism. But when you restrict carbohydrates, your appetite goes way down. The reason why it does this is twofold. The first reason is because you start to get an increase in GABA, which relaxes your body, and it does promote relaxation of neurons and things like that. And your body what happens is after about 4 to 8 weeks, your body upregulates all sorts of enzymatic processes that are responsible for converting body fat into energy. And so what happens is you do start to burn more energy because you are now producing glycogen and glucose from fatty acids, the glycerol backbone of triglycerides, free fatty acids, and also in the Calorie cycle, you can actually produce carbohydrates when you do glycotic exercise, like mixed martial arts and stuff like that, and CrossFit. You create carbohydrates from lactic acid. And that's why when you go keto, you notice like, shit, I'm never freaking sore anymore. How come I don't feel that lactic acid buildup? That's also why people report infinite endurance on a ketogenic diet, because their body can upregulates the conversion of lactic acid into glucose, so they never run out of glucose anymore. And it also preserves glycogen. It upregulates the amount of energy you're producing from body fat stores. So studies from Stephen Finney show after like 18 months, elite level athletes start to burn. They start to fuel their bodies at intensities up to 90% of their VO2 max or more. Believe me when I say that most fighting doesn't even go beyond 90% of your VO2 max. So you're fueling 90% of your VO2 max with body fat. Okay? So there's a huge upregulation of burning body fat for fuel. And then again, converting body fat, adipose tissue, into glucose and glycogen from the fatty acids themselves and the glycerol backbone of triglycerides. You're literally producing carbohydrate from body fat at that point. That's a very expensive process, and it upregulates the amount of calories you're burning. And also, obviously, you're breaking down ketones for energy, and you're recycling BCAAs and upregulating protein synthesis over time. That's been shown in multiple studies and highlighted in Stephen Finney and Jeff Volok's work, where you get more leucine recycling and leucine production and concentration in the blood, and BCAAs in general, and protein sparing as well. And I imagine if people actually eat enough protein, which is, most people restrict protein on keto, then you have even more substantial results for athletic performance. So all of this is a very energy expensive process. So the reason why, I had an experiment where I ate over it was 4,500 calories a day, which is 1,500 calories more than I used to. And I was training for 6 months on a keto diet, eating in a huge caloric surplus, and I wasn't doing the same kind of cardio that I used to do. And I lost over 12 pounds of fat mass and increased my lean mass in 6 months on that. And I have body fat scans that show this. Eating more calories. So that shows you something crazy is going on that looks like it's defying the laws of thermodynamics. But I think that it's because you're burning way more calories. Most of the studies done on this that show that keto doesn't have any more caloric expenditure than high carb diets when calories and protein are equated. The problem with those studies is that they're done too short, within 2 weeks or whatever. You need a study that shows 4 to 8 weeks what happens past that point. And we don't see those studies besides people that actually understand ketosis. Anyway, so that is why low carb diets seem to produce a shit ton of just weird abnormal amounts of weight loss. Not in everybody, but in a lot of people, where people can eat way more butter, just endless amounts of butter and meat, and still look shredded and lean. It has nothing to do with carbs are the only reason why, they're the main cause of fat gain, blah, blah, blah. It's not that. There's something else going on there. And not all people find that. There's a lot of people that do keto and low carb that start to gain weight. A lot of times it's lean mass. They're not tracking fat loss. They're eating more protein, so they're gaining more lean mass. But you have to track calories at a certain point as well if you are having trouble with that protocol. And then you'll see weight loss no matter what you follow. But the other thing about carbohydrates is that they do stimulate the appetite. They stimulate dopamine. So again, back to the first point is that keto diets zap your appetite. And the reason why they do this is also because why the fuck would your body be hungry when it's getting almost all of its energy from body fat? Your body literally is storing over 84,000 calories worth of caloric energy as body fat on a lean individual with 12% body fat. That's an infinite amount of energy. Compare that to a normal 1,500 calories people get from their carb intake per day. Your body's producing its own body fat from the inside, or producing its own caloric energy from its body fat endogenously. You literally you're not hungry because you don't need the calories. That is why you see a lower appetite in ketogenic diets. When you notice your appetite go away in ketosis, that is a sign that your body has created the metabolic changes, which are a thing, required for converting body fat to energy. Okay? And I'm not saying keto is like the be-all end-all. I'm explaining why it's got these benefits that people think are magical. It's not magic. It's pretty rational and science-based. So you lose your appetite because you're producing your caloric energy now from the inside. So you don't need to eat exogenous food anymore. Besides protein, because you'll see a loss of muscle mass in relation to your amino acid deficit. So it's a good idea to eat a lot of protein, like the carnivore diet people that seem to get the best results from a body composition standpoint. Eat more protein so you don't break down body tissue, but that's why you see a downregulation of appetite on keto. So carbohydrates can make you hungry, absolutely, especially simple carbs. So I noticed the minute that I started to eat sugar, right, especially sugar, like refined sugar or refined carbs at all, even white rice, my appetite went through the roof. Okay, I remember just being able to fast for like an entire day, and I trained 3 times in a day, and I wasn't hungry at all. And then when I started eating carbs, all of a sudden I could not fast anymore without being deathly hungry. All of a sudden, when I'm coming home from the gym, I'm in traffic, and it actually started to bother me because I felt like I was going to die if I didn't get more food. This is very common. Carbs do spike appetite, and this is the reason why for anorexia and people that are low body weight, this is why, like the Ray Peat diet, for example, its main benefit is for people who are underweight or they have low thyroid. Their whole thing is speeding up metabolism, speeding up the thyroid. Well, if you're super skinny, you have no business being on a ketogenic diet. For my clients that are underweight and they want to gain weight, or the skinny dudes want to put on more mass, stuff like that, I tell them, look, eat 2 pounds of meat if they're a man per day, and eat as much potatoes and rice as you want, And these people make crazy transformations where they get abs for the first time, even though they're already skinny, but now they actually have abs, and they put on like 15 pounds in a matter of 4 months, which is crazy. So it's like they get leaner and gain more mass is what it looks like. Anyway, so yeah, carbs do spike appetite. They spike dopamine, and they feed certain bacteria in your gut that also feeds on those carbohydrates. So, there's not really a lot of causal evidence that gut bacteria is a cause of disease, but there is causal evidence that the bacteria in your gut is there to digest the food you eat. So if you eat carbs, you're feeding gut bacteria that likes to eat carbs. And so you're going to start to have more cravings to eat carbs to feed those gut bacteria, especially if you have these, overgrowths like I did, like SIBO and Candida overgrowth. Okay, and I guarantee you most average people in our society have overgrowths with all the sugar they're eating and antibiotics people are using. Now, as far as omega-6 is concerned, again, pointing back to all the people that eat these like mainstream fitness diets like Lee Norden and just anyone who goes to the gym and hires a personal trainer, unless you have me who actually studies this shit, these people are all eating a shit ton of omega-6s and, for their main source of fat. And they lose a shit ton of weight. So as far as your appetite's concerned, look, I think from my experience, I found most people feel sick as fuck when they eat omega-6, and it makes them have stomach problems and they don't want to eat anymore. And I find anytime I eat anything with a high omega-6, whether it's chicken fat or especially vegetable oils, it fucks my stomach up. So, I don't think this. The other thing is blood sugar. When you have blood sugar spikes up and down throughout the day, it will dictate your energy, your mood, and also your cravings. Too much blood sugar insulin spikes way up, and then it shuttles all that blood sugar into your cells, and then insulin's way down to the point, blood sugar goes way down because of the high insulin spike, and then you feel lethargic and you feel hungry and you have cravings that makes you want to eat more food. So that will influence your appetite through the hunger bounce back mechanisms when blood sugar gets low, but also because when people are low mood, low energy, and they feel like garbage, and they have the low blood sugar effect, it causes people to binge eat. It causes people to reach for the food, go to the vending machine at work and stuff like that. So yeah, blood sugar does also kind of influence your appetite and things as well. And omega-6 does play a role in insulin sensitivity. So here is the main mechanism that omega-6 works on disease rates and things like that. And so obviously you do have like inflammatory cytokines and eicosanoids. Too many inflammatory eicosanoids that need to be balanced out by the omega-3s in your red blood cell. But the saturation of fatty acids and the composition of fatty acids in your cells is going to dictate your sensitivity to insulin, your levels of inflammation, and these other things. So I've had clients that have shown me red blood cell counts of their omega-3 to omega-6 in trans fat counts as well in their tissues. I have had clients that showed me that. And these tests are amazing. And essentially what happens is over a lifetime or over time of eating higher omega-6 fats, they start to accumulate in your cells. The composition of fats that you eat dictate the composition of fats in your cells. Generally though, the thing that people miss is it takes about 2 years to fully, like if you specifically are on a diet to remove all omega-6 linoleic acid from your body, it can take up to 2 years or more to fully remove those omega-6 fats or to produce a substantial change in your red blood cells. These people, so you can lose a shit ton of weight within a matter of 4 months. I had a client who dropped from 315 pounds down to like 240 within 2 months, and he put 100 pounds on his deadlift at the time through alternate day fasting. But when he did eat, though, he ate a shit ton of omega-6s and a lot of freaking carbs. But he just did alternate day fasting and hardcore training with me. And so you can produce a shit ton of weight loss in a short amount of time. But your omega-6, when you lose body fat, you lose omega-6 with it. Because you're burning body fat. You're burning these omega-6s as well as other fats when you lose body fat. So just losing body fat alone will remove omega-6s from your body. But but you still have omega-6s in a higher ratio than omega-3, and it can take years to change that ratio to more omega-3 to omega-6. So again, you lose all this body fat, but it's still going to take a long time to get the omega-6s out of your cell. So clearly omega-6 is not necessarily controlling your body fat. It is a calories in versus calories out equation. As far as appetite and all that stuff, maybe the omega-6 in your red blood cell is dictating insulin sensitivity, which has an indirect effect on blood sugar and whatnot, which influences your hunger. But look, fact of the matter is, when you cut carbs, your appetite goes fucking down. And regardless of anything, if you do increase the protein and the fiber in your diet, which again, I hardly eat any fiber at all, you're increasing the satiety of your diet so much that it does become a lot harder to overeat calories. Okay? Look at these vegans. These vegans, the majority of the fats that they're getting from their diet is omega-6 fats. Okay? I think the 80-10-10 low-fat, high-carb vegans, they're the leanest without needing to worry about counting calories. And they're cutting most of their omega-6 fats. They're hardly eating any fat at all, but the amount of omega-6s that they are getting, or the amount of fat that they are getting is from omega-6. And I don't think that's healthy necessarily, but these people are eating a shit ton of carbs and they're not counting calories, just because when fat is so concentrated in calories and energy, that of course, if you're eating high carb, you're obviously not keto, and you're eating more added fats and things, you're just going to have so much of a caloric surplus that you can't burn off. But the high carb, low fat, 80-10-10 vegans are removing that gigantic source of calories, the fat, and they're eating a shit ton of carbs at the same time. Now, there might also be mechanisms at play here, like the Randall cycle, involved in how much energy you're burning from carbs versus fat based on the composition of your diet. But I made videos about that where it's sort of like not really as simple as carbs or fat, or else you're like dying because you're eating both at the same time. So keep in mind, this discussion has nothing to do with health outcomes. This is entirely based about body fat gain and our obesity epidemic. So So calories are the cause, but the source of calories that you eat dictate how much how much you naturally want to overeat, or how much you naturally want to eat. It dictates your appetite. So calories matter, but the types of foods and macro composition of your diet also matters. And you don't need to count calories as long as you're controlling satiety through various mechanisms. And you can, quote unquote, hack your caloric expenditure. And without a shadow of a doubt, I have found, after being keto and training super intensely for a period of years, my body can tolerate so much more carbohydrates at this point. It's insane. And I stay super lean to where I can see my six-pack here around. So I think omega-6s are not something people should be eating a lot of. Most of the mainstream health paradigm, these people think omega-6s are healthy, so they load up on them because faulty science that shows replacing saturated fats with polyunsaturated fats had decreased risk of heart disease outcomes, but an increased risk of overall mortality, as people don't tell you. And then these people just think, oh, I should eat a bunch of polyunsaturated fats to avoid heart disease, and it's just ridiculous. But yeah, from a weight loss standpoint, even carbs don't matter. But I do think carbs play a bigger role in overeating than omega-6 fats. But I might be wrong, okay? But no matter what you believe about carbs and omega-6, the fact is you don't need to limit either of them to produce weight loss. And the main cause of obesity has to do with more junk food available. Okay, and the addictive nature of these foods, and the millions of dollars that is poured into making these foods as addictive as possible through food science and sociology, and millions of dollars invested in marketing these foods and making them subliminally freaking addictive as well, and programming you to think that, these foods are life or whatever. So, and also we're marketed the cereals as children, which is a disturbing topic. We get addicted to sugar from an early age. So anyway, and then of course you feed the gut bacteria that also craves these foods. So yeah, I'm probably missing a lot of different things, but if you disagree with me, put them down in the comments. Let me know your experience. Let me know your opinions on this one, and I will talk to you next time.